The first thing you start with when you develop a game is to bring on the table what we call the pillars. What are the pillars of our game? And our main pillars were obviously Warhammer. How do we use the IP? How do we use it properly? How do we make it feels like a Warhammer game? And then the second one was we want an hack and slash on console, not only on PC but also on console. It means a lot. We will speak about it later. And also we wanted to bring back the couch co-op experience, which is a lot missing, I think, by those days. And mainly for an hack and slash on PC, it's not something you are used to see currently. And so that was our main pillars.
Yeah, so what you can see on the screen right now is we're introducing two of the characters. We have 4 characters in the game. We have the Imperial Captain of the Empire, Conrad Volin. He fulfills the kind of disruptive melee frontline role in the game. He has a lot of abilities like the one here, which buffs the damage of his allies around him, but he really likes to get up in the thick of the action and really start fighting and kind of keep the mobs and the enemies off his allies. Right now he's playing with Alontir, the High Elf Mage. So Alontir can specialize in a lot of different things. I've been playing a ton of it myself. And in the video we'll be showing you today, we have a bunch of different builds throughout the different levels you've got as we play through, so you'll be able to see some of the different things that Alontir and Conrad, as well as the other 2 characters, which we'll be showing off a little bit later on, are capable of doing.
So where are they at the moment?
So at the moment they are in the city of Nuln, where the story starts. So in fact, our characters are heroes from the Great War against Chaos that just takes place in the Kislevit region. Thank you.
No worries.
And they are coming back into Nuln with Magnus, which is soon the new emperor of the empire. And then something happened and they have to deal with. I won't tell you, you have to play the game to discover what's happening. But so the story starts in Nuln, and then you will visit different places around the city, including this one and one other we will see a bit later. So we have mainly it's about Nurgle during the first act, because Gods of Chaos in the Warhammer IP cannot work together really. It's not, they are not
what you call team players, are they? No.
No. So the IP means you have to separate them from in the gameplay actually. So in the first act you will see Nurgle, and then you will see Khorne and Slaanesh and Tzeentch. So you will, if you like the chaos in Warhammer, you will see a lot of them. And so here we are in Nuln.
Who's your favourite Chaos Gods, just off the cuff?
It's Khorne because of the Bloodthirster.
Yeah, that's a cracking monster. What about you, Chris?
I really like Tzeentch, particularly what we've done in Chaosbane, because it's one of those gods that is really underrepresented.
Yeah.
And actually, while working with the Chaos gods in particular, it allows you to put a certain form of elements of that god into the game here. So you see we're fighting the kind of creatures and denizens of Nurgle, and they use a lot of debuffs that involve poisons that kind of sap away at the main characters and drain their health.
Oh, those Nurglings, they're actually slashing at you.
Yes.
Brilliant. Look at them, they look like roast chickens. Fantastic.
You can also see them, they'll like climb up into little clumps and fight together and stuff like that. But same for example, later on we'll see some of the enemies of Khorne, and Khorne is the kind of like the chaos god of almost like ferocity and rage and combat and bloodlust and that sort of thing. What you can do with the enemies with those is the enemies buff each other up and buff their attack damage and that sort of thing instead. So
you don't want to get surrounded by them, no.
I mean, you don't want to really get surrounded by any chaos gods, but we might be having some slight video issues on looks.
Okay, so we've gone underground now.
Yes, we are in the sewer of Null, which are quite, how to say in English, sorry. There is a lot of Nurgle things in the sewers, so you can see them on the background, and it feels like Nurgles, so you really have to deal with. So it's a lot about poison, for instance, and you will see a lot of Nurgles miniatures. So if you are a fan of the IP, you will very soon recognize the Chaosbane, the Plague Bearer Herald, the banner as well. So for instance, in the gameplay, for us it's important to make sure that the banner have something different. So in the Nurgle one is healing the other. So you have to focus him first before to take care of the other, because otherwise you won't be able to kill the other because they are healed by the banner. So it's things like that. And so as said, Chris, the banner of Khorne will do something different.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things we really capture in terms of the kind of like top-down ARPG styles of things in this hack and slash games. There's your noble clump, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Like just stacked on top of each other. But one of the things you'll find that is a lot of it is scale in terms of what you'll see throughout the video that we're showing here. So it's a lot about having a lot of enemies on screen at once and really deciding how you want to deal with that. So you said earlier that you don't want to be surrounded by them, but often that is somewhat the case. But luckily we've got the soldier running in and fighting off the chaos spawn and able to stun some of the animations and work together with the mage there in order to clear through them.
That disruptive tank role really well there. Do we get to glimpse any other factions besides so the Imperials and Chaos in this? Or are you leaving yourself open for future projects there?
There's some beastmen. You'll see some like Ungor beastmen as you're going through, and there's also some cultists, and obviously different cultists of various allegiances to different gods. Actually, what we're diving into right now is the skill system.
Yes, so you can equip 6 active skills at the same time and 3 passive skills. So you can choose among something like 40 different active skills, and I guess it's 20 to 30 passive skills. And so we have a dedicated skill point system where the idea is for the player to choose exactly the way he wants to play his character. So you can even choose to equip only 5 active skills if you want to have more powerful skills instead of a lot of skills. It's really up to you. And it comes to how you want to build your character, because you have, in this kind of game, you play first the story. So we have a story written, we can speak about it a bit later, but by Mikey, if you know him.
Yeah.
So he's a writer from the Black Library. And when you play the game at first, you play the story with one of the characters. You can restart the same story with another character. You won't have exactly the same dialogues because, in the Warhammer IP, obviously, Slayer does not interact the same than an Empire Soldier with the NPC. So you see, we have written, Mike Lee has written the dialogues 4 times, in fact. And so after you arrive at what we call the end game system, and then it's all about how you want to build your character in an hack and slash game. So the skill system is one of those. It's one of your tools to make it the build you want. Do you want to focus on fire? Do you want to focus on protection? Do you want to focus on helping your teammates if you want to? Because it's a co-op game as well. And so it's one of our possibilities.
Speaking of the endgame systems, actually what we had while you were discussing there was we went through the God skill tree, which is basically you get a bunch of points that you can allocate towards using fragments you collect in the game. You can basically search for the blessings of your god. We were looking at the tree for Isha, the elven goddess of nature and fertility. And what you could see is we now have that ability. We'll use it a little bit later on, but it summons like a healing field around to help your allies. But right now we're jumping into showing off a couple of the cool features that we have lined up here. This is Elessa. So this is one of the first times that we're showing off the Wood Elf Waywatcher. For Chaosbane, she really excels at kind of ranged combat, really kind of sapping enemy strength with poisons and laying traps as well. She can also summon dryads to help her in combat, so you can see that she has an I Am Groot with her, and he is kind of holding off the forces of Khorne out here as well. So that's something that we're really excited, because we're now in this part in the streets of Prague. So this is shortly after magic has like run through the city and absolutely terraformed it, fusing flesh with bone and all sorts of stuff like that.
And can you build up your sort of summoning skills? The Dryad there looks fantastic. Can she get a sort of a little gang along with her?
Yes. In fact, it's one of her god skill. You can summon 3 to 5 Dryad at the same time for a short period of time and do a lot of damage.
Oh, we've got a dwarf. That's a Slayer, isn't it?
So we just had, it's drop-in, drop-out co-op. So we have couch co-op like Jean-Georges said earlier on all systems. So we had someone drop in, join us now. We decided to bring in Braggy Axebiter, the Dwarf Slayer. And he is a much more DPS-focused melee character. So a little less about the stuns and a little more about getting into the action and really kind of like leaping in. So him and the Dryad should give enough protection for Elessa to do her thing.
That house is quite messed up. It's
Yeah.
not in a good state.
And as you can see on the screen, one player is playing with the mouse and keyboard layout. You can see it here. And the other one is playing with a gamepad. So you can play on PC up to 4 characters on the same screen. So obviously only one can play with mouse and keyboard because it's not possible otherwise on PC. And the 3 other can play with a gamepad. And we support a lot of kind of gamepad. And it means for us during the development, we are so, as I told you at the start of the talk, one of our pillars was to make a game for console and PC. And hack and slash on console most of the time are done first on PC, and then you port them on console. We do it the other side, not even the other side, we do both at the same time. So it's, from a development point of view, it's 2 times the work. I mean that when you do an interface for the inventory, for things like that, when you do it for the gamepad and for mouse and keyboard, you don't do the same, you have to make it twice. And so we are still working on it because the game is not yet released. And we have done a beta, for instance, some month ago now. And we got a lot of feedback about how we handled well or not the interface for each platform. And so we can now, thanks to this beta, improve the game on every aspect.
I've seen a couple of things being asked. I saw a shabby talisman drop a minute ago. How's the loot sort of aspect to this? Is there a lot to pick up?
In fact, we have something quite common in the hack and slash genre. You loot a lot. You will have a lot to loot on the ground, and it's a shared loot system. So I mean that if something drops for the wood elf, even if the Slayer get it, it will go directly in the inventory of the wood elf. So you won't have to take care of that. But everything else will be shared between the player. I mean the gold, the fragment, the different kind of fragment you can have into the game. Fragments that are used to unlock things in your god tree. And mainly they are used to bless your item. Your gears, with your god. So this is a part of our endgame system. It's a kind of crafting system to increase your gears the way you want, and you go back to the build thing I speak earlier.
Actually, Well, actually, you'll see right here, we're opening up, a lot of thought has been put into the way co-op should be implemented into the game and solo play should be implemented into the game as well. So you can see right here, when we open up the menu, it's not a case of the menu being like entirely filling up the screen and the other players have to wait while they're using it. But actually you can see two players could open up the menus and both could be working through it at the same time. Or what you also have is the other player gets assigned to a kind of following role while the menu is open, so they will follow the main character, and that allows you to, maybe you've just leveled up, you want to change your abilities somewhat, or you want to equip a new skill, or you tried something new and you really didn't happen to like it, you can quickly hop out and your friends aren't sitting around waiting for you and waiting for their turn if they want to do it themselves.
Or you don't end up finding yourself lost in some back street while everyone else is sort of a mile down the road. Yeah, it's a good feature.
And it was something very important for me because I played a lot Diablo 3 with my daughter, and each time she got a new skill, a new gear, and something, she opens the inventory, and I have to wait. And so, okay, in our game we won't wait the other. So you can open your inventory and the other players, one or two or three other, can continue to play. And I don't remember if you mentioned it, but they can even follow you alone, so you don't have to wait them, which is very nice for the coach co-op experience, which was one of our pillars I told earlier.
As a chronic comparer of stats on items, that's a huge relief, yeah.
You can also grief your friends if they're taking way too long in the menus by just dragging them into big waves of enemies and letting them do their own thing.
Hey, wake up!
It's fight time! They won't play themselves, but your friends will very quickly maybe realize what's going on. Actually, right now we've just jumped into a boss fight in the game, and the boss fights are one of the really exciting parts of Chaosbane. So this is a boss fight against the Great Unclean One, so one of Nurgle's greater demons.
He's absolutely vile, I love it.
As intended. So obviously he has a bunch of different skills and abilities. He kind of like summons enemies out of him and grows them in him. That attack, you can see where he swings the sword down, it destroys the environment. So you can see that there was one pillar there, but we also need to use these pillars as ways to avoid damage and avoid attacks, so we have to be really careful which abilities we're dodging and which ones we aren't, and it makes it really, really interesting from the perspective of playing with your friends. And the feedback we had from people playing these boss fights, this one was at the end of the first beta, and they absolutely loved it.
Have you got a few situations like that then with dynamic scenery? Because I imagine that adds quite a lot of tactical depth, like you say, where you've got sort of pillars and things that can disappear and stuff that can be damaged.
During this boss fight, we have things, as explained by Chris. So you have to make sure that, in fact, this attack.
Right,
is doing a long attack, and if your pillars are behind you, you will destroy them. So you have to make sure that the Great Unclean does not do this attack in the line you want to protect, in fact.
Yeah. So how many boss fights have you got in the game, roughly, like, of this scale?
Can I say it?
I'm not sure you can say that one.
Just say some.
There are a bunch of boss fights against various different monsters and enemies. There's also a bunch of mini bosses in the levels that have their own unique attack patterns, and obviously
like Metalit, Jabber's Light. Things like that.
We will show you another. It's a mini boss fight later on in the video where you take on a Corn Jabber's Life, and nice. that is almost something completely different. And I have many harsh words to say to you about that one, Jean-Georges, because that was such a tough fight when we were recently doing it.
Okay, what we can speak about a little is how we tried to make our hack and slash different from the others. So we have some game mechanisms to make it different. The first one is what we call the archetype ability. The idea behind this is to give to each character a very different way to play it. So with the gamepad, you can use the right stick of the gamepad to use your archetype ability, and with on the keyboard, it's with the space bar. So for instance, for the high elf mage, maybe half of the skill you can use are about launching maybe a fireball or an electric ball or things like that, and you can choose the direction of the ball exactly as you want. You can move it on the ground, on the level exactly as you wish. So it makes the high elf very efficient to choose exactly the target he wants to focus. So this is very interesting. And for the soldier, it's all about a shield blow that will stun the enemies or even interrupt some very big attacks. So for instance, if you have a cow spawn in front of you that will give you a big attack, you can use your shield blow just by tilting the stick in the right direction, and then you can interrupt him, and then don't be pushed back. So it's how you can play better.
Yeah.
Actually, what you can see here as well is we've stepped into a later portion of the game, and the people who are playing right now are kind of faffing around with their abilities and changing it up as they play through. But what you can see is there's a bunch of different ways to build your characters. As you unlock more skill points, you can invest in higher tiers. Higher tiers themselves, you're like, okay, it's a new tier, that's more numbers, right? But actually higher tiers in Chaosbane often give certain effects. So for the build we've had out on the show today, we have a lot of tier 2 fire skills. Tier 2 skills are influenced by fire. They kind of like pull from that bright school of magic somewhat, and they leave areas on the ground that burn enemies as you go through them. You can use those to create zones, especially with the mage's archetype skill, where he holds off, where he can like create zones of fire as enemies run across. But equally, actually, what you'll see shortly after this is the mage we have in this build goes towards a much more almost melee style. So instead of like zipping away with his teleport, he will zip in, teleport into the enemy's ground pound. It will stun all the enemies around him, and then he'll start using spells that warp and pull enemies away from him. So instead of playing this kind of like far back mage that needs to be protected by the soldier, which we had when the demo started, you'll be able to see a mage who's like willing to go up in the front line. You can see here he's got a lot of fire abilities. We'll be tweaking those just shortly to show that some of the different variety. That ball is a new one. It pulls the enemies around, and it gives you completely new ways to play the characters and how you want to work with them.
Well, yeah, it's clear looking at that footage compared to the beginning, the massive breadth of play styles sort of available even within the individual characters. So yeah, quite a lot of replayability there. A lot of elephants died to make this level, didn't they?
Yes, I won't tell too much about the place, but yes, it's actually a place that exists in the Warhammer world.
Yeah, there's some clues, right?
It is. It's super exciting to have the enemies of Slaanesh in there as well. It always feels like I mentioned earlier I'm a Tzeentch fan, but like it always feels like Slaanesh and Tzeentch get the short end of the stick when it comes to Warhammer. So to be able to put these models into the game and have that kind of play style with them is really cool.
We've seen a huge variety of enemies actually. Do you know roughly how many sort of common enemy troop types you're likely to encounter during a playthrough? I mean, it seems a good number.
There's around 70 different types of enemies.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, here's a big lad.
And this is the first time, we've had it a few times come up, but this is the Bloodlust abilities. So a bunch of effort is put into the kind of co-op aspect. If you pick up gear, it gives it to your friends. One thing isn't shared, and those are like Bloodlust orbs. So Bloodlust orbs, as you collect them, these little tiers across here fill up. As your characters level up, you gain access to new levels as well. And what it is with each new level, you get a new ability. And then for the brief period of time, it completely remaps your skill bar, and you become this almost powerhouse of like destruction as you take down and swath through enemies.
I can't help but notice we've been joined by a bird as well.
In fact, this is a kind of pet
Oh, nice.
you can equip. So yes. And to go back to the bloodlust thing, it's a thing we have reworked, I guess, 8 times during the development.
Oh, wow.
It's something very important for us because what we are happy with it now because it works at when you begin the game, because it gives you a short period of time of very powerful skill that you can enjoy as a, I would say, a casual player. And at the end of the game, when time comes to farm and to build your character, to make what is a hack and slash game when it's come to the end game, it's a very good way for you to farm the fragments, which are very important for the crafting, in fact. So yes, it was very tough during the development, but I think we have something nice now.
I like that you've got parallel modes of progression as well, as you say, with the shards. So while you're waiting to sort of gain more skills in one way, there's a whole sort of different track going on. There's other things you can be picking up sort of while you're waiting. So
I'm not sure to understand your question.
yeah,
sorry.
I asked it terribly. I was just saying basically with the god skills and the fact there's more than one
Yes.
skill tree.
In fact, how you unlock the skills, in fact. You unlock some of your skill as you level up. So when you level up, you unlock a new skill. Each time you gain a level, you gain a new skill. And also you gain what we call a favor point for your god. And then you can spend it in your god tree. And so you have to choose which path in your god tree you want to follow. And depending on that, you will specialize your character, maybe for fire damage, or physical damage, or for protection, or whatever you want. And you have to choose the good skills you want to, depending of your god tree. And also after, when it comes to bless your object, your gears, you want to do the same to maximize the efficiently, your character.
Efficiency, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, once again, of your character. So you can build your character the way you want. Really, it's very, and it also depends of the heroic set you will try to gather, because you have effect when you gather a complete set of armor. You have a special effect like comets falling from the sky, things like that.
Okay, now we're up against another pretty
The
major
Jabber
upgrade
slide.
here. Yeah.
So the corn version, because for each god you have to build we had to build the enemies for each god. So the corn version is not the same as the Nurgle version, etc.
In classic fantasy, a lot of the gods can have different versions of some of the more really powerful units, and this is the Khorne one is not a friendly guy. I have to admit, we died so much filming this. Like, I'm sad to admit how much we like burned down.
Achievement unlocked there.
Which is why the guy who's playing Braggy Spider is really happy doing the whole spinning thing, because this was the end of about 15 minutes of trying to take this guy down on a harder difficulty. I hate to admit, but that's like that's one of the mini bosses in terms of being able to take different forms of enemies and fight them in the game.
I mean, if you're feeling persecuted by one of your own bosses, that's probably a good sign, right? So
Yeah, Khorne hurts, man. When they said blood for the blood god, I didn't realize it was going to be mine. But this is actually like the kind of like last little section here where we can really show off how different the builds have become. So you can see by putting points into the banner, for example, it's so much larger in terms of buffing your allies. If you're playing solo, for example, there was a lot of thought into that. You may not need that kind of same level, so you can keep that one at a lower, so you have more ability points to spend on passive bonuses or increases elsewhere.
And you can see here, Chris played a lot with the magical projectile, and he moves it as he wants on the ground.
It's what makes the mage really fun to play is the ability you can pull your spells where you're going, and I was super grateful as a PC player to be able to be doing mouse and keyboard, as my friend hopped in here with the controller because it's so rare. Couch co-op for a long time is kind of like phased away, but it's so rare to be able to just sit down and even on PC to hop in and play with some friends.